Now that you understand the different functions that are possible for student behavior, we're going to talk about using function to support our students. This is where we will discuss why it is so critical for us to understand the function behind a student behavior when deciding which supports will most likely be effective for them. Before we go any further, I do think it's important to mention that there is an official process that can be completed called a functional behavioral analysis, or an FBA, that you've likely heard of. This process is a data finding process to determine students' needs, similar in purpose to a psych evaluation completed by a school psychologist or a phonics inventory completed by a reading specialist. We're really just trying to dig in and find out what's going on here. An FBA in itself, the process is not an intervention. It is the way we are finding out which interventions would be appropriate and most likely to be effective for that student. This is a really common misunderstanding for families and teachers and staff because an FBA is something that many parents or teachers request for their students. And there tends to be a little bit of confusion about what the purpose of this is. It is not an intervention in itself, it is a fact finding mission for the student. While an FBA is usually completed by somebody with advanced behavioral understanding, whether that's a counselor or a principal or a BCBA or a behavior specialist, that doesn't mean we can't all learn to use function of behavior in our work. When we talk about function of behavior at a more basic general level, we tend to think about it as perceived motivation. I'm not a certified practitioner of ABA, but I can look at a student's behavior and determine, what do I think is going on here? What's going on beneath the surface that I could really use to help and support this student? That's the mindset of perceived motivation. We might not always guess right every time, but what we're going to do is look for patterns over time when we collect data or when we're completing some sort of informal FBA or behavior chart. If you have behavioral data from multiple stakeholders that show that a student is almost always performing a behavior to get peer attention, that means there's a really high likelihood that that's an accurate guess of the function. If there's only one person providing behavioral data, I would be a little bit concerned because we want to make sure that that's not biased in any way for preconceived notions. As a reminder, when we think about behavior, we're gaining or avoiding something. It can be sensory. We can escape at a demand. We can seek connection or avoid attention, or we can seek something tangible or avoid something tangible. So, how does knowing the function really help me? Is this just another thing that I'm being asked to do or more data to collect? The key to understanding why the function of behavior is so important is knowing that when we match the right interventions or supports to the function, it is so much more effective for the student in terms of how long it takes for the student to show progress. If a student is in the wrong intervention, or has the wrong support in place, it's going to take significantly longer for us to figure out how to support them. So, for example, if a student is showing they are seeking adult attention, things like check in, check out, which is a relationally based intervention where a student meets with an adult mentor twice a day, usually morning and afternoon, and they do a quick 2-minute check-in, talk about goals, talk about what's going well, talk about what they need more support in. And it's a very quick, easy intervention to put into place. The goal there is for the adult to support the student with frequent reminders and feedback. Additionally, there are interventions like Check and Connect, where again, there's an adult mentor for the student, but that mentor is actually a long term mentor who's going to work with a student over the the span of years to really connect with them and build a positive relationship with school. Again, adult attention is being served there. There are other interventions like Renew, which is typically with high school students, and Meaningful Work, which can be used at any age. It's where we give kids jobs so they feel like they're a productive part of a community and then feel like they can add to the community that they're in. Again, these are all going to be based with an adult who's giving them proactive attention. But there are things we can do outside of interventions. You could also have a student sit and eat their snack with you. If all day long they're trying to get your attention and it's not at a time that works, well, let's give it to them proactively. Set a timer and say, You've got 5 minutes, sir. Tell me about every Pokemon you know. And that kid is going to talk about every Pokemon they know for that 5 minutes. And hopefully, knowing they have that set aside time is going to make it so that they're not seeking your attention throughout the times where you're trying to instruct others or that student. Similarly, sensory seeking students, things like scheduled breaks, heavy work, giving them certain tools to use, like a fidget or a wobble seat, can be really helpful for these students. We worked with a teacher who taught in kindergarten, and she had one student who was exceptionally sensory seeking, and he would literally move textbooks back and forth across the room before they had their carpet time each day because he needed that heavy input before sitting for a sustained time. Peer attention, and for another one, the student can get a peer mentor. They could potentially be a part of a social skills group or some instruction in pro-social behavior. And for sensory avoidance students, we can really think about gradual exposure to things that they're not open to. So thinking about fire alarms. Well, maybe the first time the kid hears the fire alarm shouldn't be in a heightened setting like a drill. Maybe we can start by practicing hearing the fire alarm for just 10 seconds at the beginning of the lesson or the end of the day, and really increase the acceptance of that sensory avoidant task. Also, really easy tools like noise canceling headphones, um, not wearing certain clothes like that have a collar, things like that are so easy. Those are really easy accommodations to make. And when we know the function, we can put them in place.